Hi, my good friends. It's Nurse Desi, and I'm back with another video so we can get back into the immune system. But first, I'd like to start off with a positive affirmation. What we need to do as nursing students is to stay focused, put in the work, and make it happen. I can, we can learn this together. So today's focus, friends, is the non-specific immune system. Now, what does non-specific mean? I'm going to pause right now and give you a minute to think about that. Non-specific. So when you hear the word non-specific, there's two words. Non meaning not, so not specific. So basically, our immune system, as we talked about before, is something that we have innately to help us or protect us from viruses or diseases, overgrowth cell tumors. So non-specific means that we have a system innately that fights off just about anything. Okay? In the non-specific, the same thing happens each time. The most important thing to remember about the non-specific system is it has no memory. The non-specific immune system has no memory. It also has a rapid response, meaning it goes quickly, minutes to hours. So, what are some things we need to know about the non-specific system, immune system? Let's talk about the anatomical barriers. So what does anatomical mean? What are the barriers? So the barriers are things that prevent the pathogens from entering into our system. So anatomically, it would be tough, intact barriers that prevent entry and colonization of microbes. That is the definition of anatomical barriers. Tough, intact barriers that prevent entry and the colonization of microbes. And we said in the other video, microbes is just another fancy word for bacteria. So what are some examples of anatomical barriers? Well, we have skin, mucous membranes, and bony encasements. Those are the examples of anatomical barriers. So when you're taking your test and you say, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember this? Well, if you just take your hand and you just put it on your arm and you just think, okay, you can see your skin is protecting us. It's something that's on us, okay? Our mucous membranes inside, and bony encasements inside of our body, they all are these anatomical barriers. Now we have something called physiological barriers, okay? So the physiological barriers would be stomach acid, and we know that the stomach acid in our digestive system is the hydrochloric acid. And then temperature and fever. The temperature and fever are symptoms of the inflammatory process. So this would be the physiological barriers. Okay. Now, let's talk about some other barriers that we have, or some other first line of defense mechanisms that the body has to prevent pathogens from entering into our system. We have mechanical factors. Now, what does mechanical factors mean? That is similar to what we just talked about. It's the skin barrier, okay? Mechanical meaning something that can move, okay? Mucous membranes, saliva, wash and dilute, urine that flushes from the genitourinary tract, and the blood-brain barrier. A nickname for the blood-brain barrier is BBB. So anytime you hear those letters, the acronym for blood-brain barrier is BBB. So again, mechanical factors, okay? Skin with the cellulose, mucous membranes, okay? Saliva, wash and dilute, urine, flushes the genitourinary tract, and the BBB, the blood-brain barrier. Let's talk about now some chemical barriers of the non-specific defense. We have lysosomes, which are the tears of the eyes, okay? But it's not the tears, it's the chemical that's within the tears that is the barrier, and that is called the lysosome. And remember, the saliva that we have is also, again, having that same chemical, the lysosome, okay? Another chemical barrier is low pH gut, okay? So all of these things make up the first line of defense for the non-specific immune system. Now, we need to think about this like a story. So what actually is happening here? Well, let's pretend that a roach. Let's pretend that a roach is a pathogen. And I guess everybody should know what a roach looks like. It's something that crawls. It's, it's not pretty looking, and it's ugly, especially if you see a brown roach. I don't like roaches at all. I'm from the city, but roaches, roaches aren't good. So let's use a roach as our pathogen. So let's pretend that none of these anatomical barriers, mechanical factors, or chemical factors worked. And somehow this roach, which we're going to pretend is the pathogen, is attacking our body. So now, what is going to happen next? What do you think is going to kick in? So now the body is going to kick in a response. It's going to have to take action against this. And so the first thing that's going to kick up into this is we have something called macrophage. Macro, again, we have to look at our context clues. Macro is large. So macrophage, let's pretend that the macrophage is a large garbage truck, okay? And what the macrophage does is it eats dead and dying cells. That's the function of the macrophage. But also what the macrophages do is they eat invading pathogens. So now that roach somehow got into our system, our immune system was weakened, maybe we weren't feeling good, we're studying too hard, we're working and going to school at the same time, and the pathogen attacks. So it activates the macrophage, which I told you is similar to a garbage truck. So the garbage truck eats the pathogen, and then now what happens? So anyway, let's go back a little bit. Let me digress some. Where does the pathogen live? So the pathogen lives inside the tissue, okay? The macrophage, they live inside the tissues. So the response time is very quick, okay? From, I would say, minutes to just a few hours, because the macrophages are inside the tissue. So it's easily accessible to coming out to help fight off pathogens. Okay? Now, the process of the macrophage fighting off and eating the invading pathogens, there's a term for this. So the term for this ingestion of pathogens is called phagocytosis. Okay? Phagocytosis. So cytosis, we know, is cell. So something is eating the cell. So it's the macrophage. The phagocytosis is the ingestion of the pathogens. These things I'm saying over and over again, it sounds very repetitious, but these are some things that we need to constantly keep in the forefront of our brain. And as you know, repetition leads to doing something very well. If you keep hearing or keep doing something over and over and over again, you will soon perfect it. And that's what we want to do. We want to perfect this information so that we can do well in our classes. Okay? So, phagocytosis is the ingestion of foreign particles. The phagocytes, what are the phagocytes? So the phagocytes are types of white blood cells, or they're also derivatives of something called leukocytes. And we learned in the previous video that leukocytes are the white blood cells. So basically, our immune response is kicking in. That's why when you get a blood test, they can tell when there's an infection that's present in the body, because they look at your white blood cell count. And if the white blood cell count is elevated, it's not within the normal range, then that's a cue or a clue or something that's telling the doctor, hey, there's some infection going on. So we're not going to get into the blood draws, but just think about some things that you already know to help you process this information a little bit better. So now that we know that these phagocytes go and they fight off this pathogen, which the pathogen we're calling for study purposes a roach, let's talk about the ways it actually gets rid of it. So, 3 ways that we get rid of pathogens, or let's call it the nasties. So, you kill the nasties, which is phagocytosis, or you kill the cell that's infected by the nasty. So when you kill the cell killing is called apoptosis, okay? And the third way you kill is to inactivate the nasties, and you do this with antibodies, okay? So again, the antibodies are things that are built up within our system, okay, to fight off the infection. So let's take this to the real world. I love to try to use real world examples to connect the information that we're learning. So people, unfortunately, that were infected with COVID-19 have this illness. And for however long they had the illness, what the body's response to that is it builds up antibodies, okay? So the body, when it gets infected with something, it's building up antibodies. The body starts creating this. So when the next time you are faced with this particular illness, bacteria, virus, your body is able to fight it off, and perhaps you won't get as sick as you did the first time. However, this is a disclaimer from me, because the scientists tell us they're not sure with COVID-19 if that is actually the case. They're not sure if, in fact, the antibodies make you protected against the illness. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say on that, because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. Now, let's go back to the non-specific immune system. The non-specific immune system, the same thing happens time and time again. The same thing happens each time, like Groundhog Day. It's the same thing. Non-specific, it is like the same music that you listen to on series. Like I listen to The Heat, and I don't know how many times they play Cardi B. You hear the same song over and over and over and over again. So when you think about the non-specific system, think about me in my car driving, listening to the same song over and over and over again by the same artist. So the same thing happens each time in the non-specific system. It has no memory. So it doesn't remember what it did the last time. So it just does the same thing over and over. Just like the DJ plays the same song. He forgot that he played that same song like 30 minutes ago, and for some reason he plays it again. Okay, he has no memory either. Now, non-specific is rapid, a rapid response. It goes from minutes to hours. That's important to know, because when we talk about other types of immune system responses, that is not going to be the case. So again, let's go to the non-specific physiological aspects of the immune system. So non-specific, we have leukocytes, which I told you earlier are white blood cells. So we have within the leukocytes, underneath that would be the granulocytes. And within this category, we have something that it's called the neutrophils. And that's the most important one to remember is the neutrophils. The neutrophils are phagocytic. Phagocytic. So the neutrophils are the phagocytic cells. Okay? And they make up 60 to 70%. Now, the next one is the basophils. So the basophils are 1% or less, and they release the histamine. Okay, so the histamine has to do with our allergic response. The histamine causes the allergy symptoms like runny nose or stuffy nose, sneezing, coughing, watery eyes. Now, think about it. When you hear the word histamine, what type of medicine do you think that you need to take when you have the histamine that is released into your system that produces the allergies? Think about it. So that is the antihistamine. Again, let's break down our words. Anti meaning against. So against histamine. So in order to put the histamine response into check, we need to take a antihistamine. And so some common antihistamines would be things like your Benadryl, your Sertrazine. There's lots of different allergy medicines on the market, but or Claritin. So those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm quite sure there's so many other antihistamines that are on the market. Okay, and then another phagocytic cell would be the eosinophils, and they make up 2 to 4% of the non-specific physiological defense. Now, again, this is a little bit tricky because the leukocytes, which are the white blood cells, is the main category. And within the leukocytes, we have these granulocytes. So we have this subdivision of cells that fall underneath the leukocytes. So I'm going to call the leukocytes the big mama bear. Okay, so the leukocytes are the big mama bear, and then the granulocytes I'm going to call the baby bears. So these are the baby bear fighters that come underneath the mama bear, if that makes sense. So the leukocytes are the big mama bear, and the granulocytes have the 3 baby bears that fight underneath the mama bear, which would be the neutrophils, the basophils, and the eosinophils. And remember that the neutrophils are the most important ones to know about. Okay? Now you have something called agranulocytes. That's agranulocytes. Agranulocytes. So underneath the agranulocytes are the monocytes, which are 3 to 8%. and they are mature to macrophages. They are also phagocytic. And then we have lymphocytes, okay? And these are the stem cells, and they become the T cells, the B cells, and the natural killer cells. Now, the lymphocytes in this category is the most important to know. And just remember, all of these cells are considered white blood cells. So the lymphocytes, again, are the stem cells, okay? And they become the T, B, and natural killer cells. So the T cell comes from the thymus. They migrate to the thymus, I should say. The B cells also migrate to the bone marrow. And then we have the NK cells, which are the natural killer cells. And so all of these cells, which I'm going to call, like I said, all of these white blood cells, again, help fight in this immune response against the invader or the pathogen, which we made up a little story and said it was a roach. So all of these things come out, and they're non-specific, meaning they don't have any particular memory. They just fight. They just come out blazing because they want to kill off or eat, engulf, do something to get rid of this pathogen that has no business in our system. So I am going to stop here because I know this was a lot of material and we've exhausted what we need to do in this particular area. So I thank you. Keep confident, keep positive, and keep studying so we can win together. Until the next time, bye-bye.